we submitted, and then I showed the elevations of both the proposed system and the strata of essentially the compact material and then the sand as it relates here, so that you can see that there's approximately, the bottom of the system is approximately 4 feet above the groundwater, that is approximately 12 feet above the breakthrough to sand, if you will. We would still see some leaching and infiltration out of the chambers. That's why we're using them, which would then serve to recharge that local higher groundwater level and the wetland system. But we also have the deep wells to move some of the water, because we simply, in that kind of a tight soil, don't have the area available for the infiltrative capacity into that kind of a tight soil. The other thing that I think that the elevations help to show you, and I hope address the concern, is with the was expressed that we would be intercepting that groundwater and putting it all down into the wells. But as you can see, this system is actually above where that groundwater level is. That's not to say that there's not periods of inundation in time when there could be saturation, but your static groundwater elevation that was encountered is quite a bit lower there. And so we're not going to see a constant, if you will, and I don't think it was going to act that way anyway, but again, I'm just trying to go through each point that was raised by the commissioners as they may relate to the protected interests. And for, I think this further serves that there's very unlikely to be any impact to a wetland system of this size by moving groundwater down to a deeper level. The point is really to take the road runoff, which is causing damage to properties at this point. The town needs to put something in for drainage. We've tried to come up with really the very best system. If there's I don't know what else I can do at this point to design a better drainage system with the area and the road layout that's there. Between using the catch basins, the storm scepters, your general roads don't have, drainage systems don't have storm scepter, treatment before they're infiltrated. This is really, and especially with, the ones that are even out of the buffer zone while they're out of the coastal bank to a vegetated wetland. So your water quality is greatly improved compared to right now, where you have all of this completely going untreated, either over the coastal bank and causing damage to private properties on that side, or into the wetland on the other side of the road. So that really summarizes the plan changes and the other information we've added there. The other piece that I've addressed in my letter is questions with respect to there was a lot of discussion about concern for the vegetated wetland and how are we going to be sure that going forward there were impacts. And for the last meeting I had looked at, well, there were these old monitoring wells that were out there that were used and you had all this data. As I looked at that, and it doesn't exactly relate to the health of the wetland. And it seems to me that the best way to really do this is to give you a report on an annual basis where a wetland expert looks at the wetland and says, are there any changes? Is there any dying vegetation? We'll give you a pre-construction report, a post-construction report. You have a baseline, and then an annual report from the same person who's an expert in these areas. You go out, if everything looks okay, there's nothing that's essentially what you'd be looking for. I think first and foremost in the immediate vicinity of this, is there any change in the composition of the vegetation? Hydrology, area dry that's wet now, and I think further to that, the other piece of information that's not on the plan but was submitted in a plan format with the letter was the watershed map. There had been a request to look at what is the overall contributing watershed, and when you really look at the size of the wetland, which is it's a sizable wetland in of itself, of which we are right on the edge. When you look at the contributing watershed area, and then what I've done include really the road is what would be the portion of the watershed that would then be being infiltrated. I think when you tie all of that together, it makes it clear that this piece of putting the water and treating it into the ground here is very, very unlikely to have an impact on a wetland of this size here. I think that's the last piece of really the information that we wanted to present for this meeting. I'm happy to try to answer it if there's still additional concerns or questions with the system. I'm not sure what else I could really, do, how I would do a better or different drainage system here, for, to try to take care of the runoff.
Questions for Art from the commission?
Got a quick one. This is a much better design. My quick question is what this part of the well is encased?
Cased, yes. So it's a 6-inch PVC casing.
So you're only treating what's on the road, and the water that is, let's say that there's a clay layer right here. What my only concern is that you would punch a hole through the clay layer. If this was not encased, then there would be an ability for a perch layer over here to drain down into that.
No,
but you don't
because it's solid.
It's
Right.
solid. Okay, that's actually good.
So it'd only get overflow if it increased to the height of the, somewhere up in here then. Or it'd have to go way to the top.
Yeah,
That's
it has to
right.
be at the top
Oh,
of
okay.
that first treatment system. Now, that's
Oh.
actually just placed in one location, the
Oh, you
4-inch
mean
PVC?
overflow to the wetland?
No, I'm just saying if the
Oh, those
if
would all
the
have
perch,
to flood.
groundwater.
Right.
So it would be quite a wet time.
Right.
My concern was more, we've had this in
Oh,
a few
yeah.
areas. I don't think this is necessarily the case here, but we've had a perched wetland on top of a clay layer, and people have punched through a hole
Mhm.
and drained it. And so that was my number one concern. As far as I can tell, I'm not an engineer, I think you've addressed it.
Mr. Chairman,
Dave's
I have one question. I guess I would preface it by saying I wouldn't want to render a judgment on this design being better than the one before us or not as good as one before us. The engineers do the engineering and we do the evaluation according to our standards. My question is there anything in the plan as originally proposed to us that does not comply with our performance standards?
If we thought it drained a wetland, then that would not conform to our performance standard. But in this case, I think they have taken action to show that it might not.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that would be, obviously, if you had a wetland and it went away, that would not meet our performance standards.
And they provided monitoring protocols and things.
He's talked to that, but we haven't been specific about how you were talking more about just observing the plants. I mean, how would you monitor the change in?
I think by direct observation. I mean, I think that by having the same person do the report, and what I detailed would be a pre-construction to give baseline, post-construction, and again, if you wanted it to be with staff to also look at it when they do, but it's just an inspection of the wetland itself in the immediate vicinity would be how, I think that that's a better metric for impact than measuring wells at some distance away with all this fluctuation and trying to then determine if that relates to the impact of the wetland. So that's, my proposal is an inspection report to you that describes any changes in composition of hydrology and vegetation.
I think the hydrology would be interesting to know the water levels in the wetlands too, and it wouldn't have.
Put it well in the wetland itself.
I'm sorry, where's the first well? You had a first well?
There were monitoring wells that are.
No, but the one that you were going to do first out of 12, weren't you going to put one?
Oh,
down?
there was a proposal from when we had when Mark Haley had done the overall analysis. He suggested that an initial test well that could have gone anywhere. I don't have a exact location of where that would go. It could be any one of if there was a preference of which well went first for results, and we could offer to do the one that's closest to the wetland resource area. But I think that I don't know that. I think that based on the design of including all of the wells, that you have to do that. It was a suggestion from him.
Wasn't it in the application though?
We put his letter in, which was a recommendation, but my application didn't lay out that we would do one well ahead of the others. But again, if that was a condition and how you wanted to see it done, I think that once you're out there and you're going to be mobilized, you probably just drill the 12 wells.
I'm only concerned about just doing it from observation. is that by the time the vegetation's changed, the wetlands already got quite a bit drier.
Yeah, that's
So
fairly
we're-
slow.
You can have a standing level well even in a wetland. That's just a PVC pipe that you measure the height of the water in there over time.
So I think that hearing that,
Have we ever required anything like that when people do drinking water wells near the wetlands or any of that sort of thing?
Not really.
No.
Water well's not at all the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Anyway, this is something we could condition in our orders.
well, I think, and again, so that it doesn't, what I don't want to have happen is, to the extent possible, is while the hearing's open, I'd like to have a discussion
Right.
as opposed to discussion that happens after. And I think that what would be a reasonable, hopeful, why don't we put in next to each of the two wetlands, but within the road layout, so I can't go into the wetland, I don't want to go drill because that might get back to your other point. But we could put a 2-inch well here and here on the layout, and then we would read those wells at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, what do you guys think?
I think that's a good
And
idea.
when you do the report, the guy that does the report takes but we don't get into monthly readings, it's just a reading that happens each time he does the report. And then, of course, the well would be in the public layout, anybody, you could go check the well level if you wanted to.
Sure.
Mhm.
Well, the nice thing is it's not subjective. That's pretty,
Sure.
the well's what it is.
I think that would work. And instead of using the old wells that are at some remote distance, we're gonna have a well drill rig there anyway to do these wells. It's not gonna be a problem to put in two-inch wells.
And did you have somebody in mind as the monitor at this point, or
I don't, but you could leave
You
the
check it
staff
with-
to approve the
the
person.
staff should
right?
approve,
Right.
yeah.
It won't be, me, it's somebody who has more expertise
I
than
can
I
think
do.
of a couple of names, but
Yeah, certainly, so staff to approve the, much like National Heritage does with experts. Before you'll accept a report, we want to know that it's someone you will accept a report from.
And there's still a cattail marsh further down. I think I did have a question about a wetland flag. Down a ways.
There's chief within 6 feet of the road, along that road there. If the wetlands extend further, are those wetland flags you have in there?
Yeah, well, what I did was based on your comments from the last week, we used this boundary that was approved for, just in 2013 for the town project. So we just used the same boundary. But I don't know that it would make, I don't have the ability, there's only really a limited road layout there for this, system to go.
It's applied for under emergency road repair? Is that
No,
right?
it's not.
Is that-
We didn't take the approach of an emergency.
Well, somebody did, and one of your things for today, it's in the application. It's emergency road repair, and I'm wondering how this fits in. It seems like you're gonna move the infrastructure anyway. This is as expensive and big as anything that you could possibly put in there to add to the infrastructure of the current roadway.
I'm not aware, and I have, Jeff,
no, I don't know.
anything about emergency road repair.
It's not being applied for as an emergency. It's
No.
just under a
I
notice.
mean, that might end up being the case at some point, but
Well,
If we delay it.
I know Cormac has some comments.
Okay, go to the public if there's no further questions from the commission. Yeah, Cormac.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Cormac Collier, Nantucket Land Council. I actually have a lot of comments here. I'm taking an extra hard look at this. And I know a few things slip by here when you do, when you stretch it out to 3 weeks and over the holiday and whatnot. To start off with, if I could go through you, Mr. Chairman, to ask Mr. Gasparo where the soil boring was in terms of, in terms of its location on the map to the actual infiltration unit.
It was on the other side of the road, and it's shown in the supplemental materials for the second meeting.
Great. I can show you where it is.
B1.
It's B1. It's actually down here, which is almost, that's 100, 200 feet away from this infiltration unit, 500 from this. I think Art knows that any time you're doing a soil analysis for a septic system, any sort of infiltration unit for a stormwater system, you can see where you're putting it. So I don't mean to sound crass or anything, but the information that's supplied here is not indicative of the conditions because it's not a soil-borne from the location where the infiltration units are going to be put. And there's actually water documentation to back that up. The water well information that Art was referring to in terms of a past application in 2002 for some infiltration wells, they did do water studies. I think Emily brought this up, but there's existing water wells right now. There's no need to install additional wells. There's existing water wells, and for our purposes, there's 2 on the northerly wetland and then 2 on the southerly wetland, E1, E2, E5, and E6. The water level readings of that are not indicative of this either. And you're saying groundwater is at 70 with an elevation of 79, so groundwater is under at about 9 feet below.
Based on that.
You have an average of 6 to 7 feet for those water level readings. So you certainly don't have enough information whatsoever to close the hearing. You need soil boring information from exactly where the infiltration units are going to be put, because you have no idea where that impermeable clay layer is. Still, if you put the infiltration unit over here, although that's actually washed away boring too, if you put it over where it used to be, maybe it could have been reflected, but it doesn't reflect that. And if you have water readings at 6, 7 feet, it's maybe indicative of not 9 feet at groundwater. So definitely there's some information that needs to be done on that. Also, in terms of the plan itself, the actual work within the 100-foot buffer zone isn't fully delineated. Still, they're not showing where the soil berms are. There's a mention of soil berms that are going to be created along the side of the road. All that's on there right now is the asphalt berms they did on the eastern side. Also, in order for full documentation of what they want to do, they need to indicate all the work that's going to be done within the 100-foot, which would include the soil berms. Not really germane in terms of impacts, but definitely in terms of process. The plans as...
Not germane in terms of impact?
The impact, but that's what actually to you, Mr. Galackley, in terms of process. We need to understand exactly where they, what is going to be proposed and what is not going to be proposed. In terms of the wetland itself, I actually think this is really interesting because there's so much information in this one. And it's the first kind of, in terms of doing this type of, this is what Commissioner Lafarge actually just referred to. The Taifa on the northerly wetland is within 100 feet of the area. It's fairly odd. It's within 5 feet of the road layout.
So that's a wetland, regardless of
On Art's plans, and this is no fault of Art, he's going right off of the RDA. It's 15 feet. Down here, I was walking around the utility pole, which is right here. There's sensitive fern, there's rushes, there's obligate species all over the place. You can see the gradient right here and the gradient right here, which is the lowest grade. This is the first wetland that I've seen. Yeah, this is the first wetland that I've seen that only covers the slope. It actually doesn't cover the lowest elevation. So normally wetlands go all the way down. So I think we can all just sensible heads prevail. There was a mistake in the delineation for the passage. The town, who is the applicant, could hold steadfast and say, look, we know there was a mistake, but it's valid for 3 years, so that's that. They have their right to do that. But I would ask, as a citizen, and then ask through you, Mr. Chairman, that you ask the town to redo the delineations to what they actually are. And this isn't just to be a stick in the mud. If they want to determine impacts for pre and post, for post-construction impacts, if a wetland is going to be deprived of water, what's going to happen first? The hydric soil is going to stop being hydric, it's going to shrink, and the vegetation on the edges is going to change. So we really need to determine exactly what that edge is. Secondly, I think Art referenced there was some sort of watershed map that you did. I didn't see that in the file, so I would love to look at that. At least it wasn't posted online, and I didn't see it when I came in the other day.
it wasn't in the packet this week.
Yeah, I didn't
It
see
might have been 2 weeks.
Two weeks
Submitted a
ago.
revised letter.
No?
Yeah. So I'd love to look at that because that was, in terms of the water
Last
budget.
week, like,
Last week.
No.
right.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
We
either.
got a revised letter, but there was nothing attached. No.
I sent this, I think, the end of the day Friday, 4 o'clock.
I'll take a look.
Yeah, we've got the
I'm not gonna-
2-page letter, but no pictures.
I may have missed it, so I'm not going to do it on the fly when we're sitting right here.
Yeah.
So this was what was prepared in response to the, I looked at the topography of the surrounding areas, and I can, leave it with you for your file. But that was what I put together and had emailed it, but either way.
We did get the new number for these two. We got
Right,
these
I
two.
dropped those off, and then I emailed that later.
One thing that they could do in terms of taking another step is that Haley actually wrote up in his original letter, he gave a gallons per day. He designed the infiltration unit based upon the impervious surface for a 50-year storm. So he has sort of an idea of actually what actually the impervious surface watershed area is. You could extrapolate that to the non-impervious surface. You could extrapolate how much is going down versus how much is percolating out, and then you'll have a better understanding in terms of really how much the wetland is going to lose versus how much it is still going to infiltrate, and you could make your best decision based on that. Finally, in terms of the exemption, BAM is somewhat, Mr. Lafarge is somewhat right, is that normally when applications with stormwater are applied to the CONCOM within 100 feet of a wetland, they have to adhere to the stormwater management policy, and that is actually in your guys' jurisdiction as well, but they have to do that. We just never see a lot of stormwater infiltration units or stormwater management within 100 feet. They're saying they're exempt for that because it's an emergency road repair and a repair of a stormwater system. That's what they've said. I would contend that this is completely new construction. It's not a repair. The road is perfectly fine. I understand that there's an emergency situation, but why they're applying for that, in my best guess is because they can't meet the stormwater management policy. They need to provide the same groundwater recharge, which also includes perch groundwater as pre-construction scenarios. So I would challenge them to do so, and again, it's in everybody's best interest. It's a town project, so they might as well apply for it and do so anyway. And that's about it. But again, in summary, there's a lot. I know you guys were sort of going that way. There's a lot of information that's still outstanding in terms of closing this one. And again, this is the first time I've ever seen drainage wells being poked through an impervious layer so close to a wetland. So this is somewhat new. Thank you.
Thanks, Cormac. Art, do you want to address any of that, or do you want to come back with it?
Yeah, I can double check it, but I think it does meet the stormwater management standards with all of the pre-treatment. I mean, it's what, if you were trying to do stormwater management, it's exactly what you would do. I mean, we've got the best level of treatment that you could have.
Do you know why you didn't apply for a stormwater treatment permit?
No.
I think it also goes to the speculating about motive. I don't think there's
Well, I
really,
just checked
there's
the
really no
application,
place
I
for that.
didn't check off emergency road repair either. But either way, I think that the system would meet the standards. But I could also see it falling under that situation easy enough. You have an emergency where you have, all of this damage that's happening from the runoff to private property. And this is what we're trying to address. And we're using best management practices, deep sump catch basins, storm scepters, infiltration. I mean, what else can you do for a drainage system in a county road that's causing damage to put the water somewhere? There's not a lot of options. And we put, this is a platinum system, if you would, in terms of including the best available measures that there are to treat that runoff before you infiltrate it. So that's what stormwater management standards call for. And we've included an operation and maintenance plan that calls for the cleaning of the catch basins, that calls for the clean out. Enforcement, that's, and making sure that stuff gets done, if the town does it, well, that's, I can't do that. But we've laid out a plan, the DPW is here, they're saying they're gonna do it. That's your stormwater management right there. And so, if you clean out the catch basins, that's where this, what are you trying to get at with stormwater management standards? You're trying to remove to the maximum extent possible your pollutant load from that runoff. So you're talking about your sediment, and then any floatables, oils, and grease. And that's exactly what the system does. The catch basin is where you're gonna have the sediment, and then you'll get additional sediment removal in the storm septa, as well as then to remove the other pollutants. So I could see that being argued if, in fact, we weren't including this other very expensive portion of the system that's not included in most road drainage, but we are. So in other words, I don't know what other stormwater management improvement could be made to this. There's clearly an emergency situation, whether it's checked off, not checked off. You've all seen it. As was discussed at the first meeting, there used to be a large area between the road and the bank to attenuate the runoff. That doesn't exist now. It's compounding, and there's damage that's happening directly from water that's running off of a public road onto private properties. I'll tell you, I really didn't expect this level of, I understand level of concern to the interests to the protected by, that you're protected with the wetland. And that's everything that we're trying to do here. To feel like, the project is to try to stop it because there's these other, whatever reasons, that's a difficult thing. Because as I see it, you've got runoff from a public road to private property, and that's what we're trying to address. In the best way, using best management practices that we can. In terms of the wetland boundary, I've said it all along, that was approved. And that is what we're using. Even if there are any, the delineation changes at some point, the system's gonna be the system. Then we're gonna be, in the county road layout. I don't know, anyway, I don't know what else to really do there. In terms of the soil boring, I showed the location. It's the best information I have available without going and doing other excavations in the road, which at this point, they're dealing with a situation that the town is, looking to do something here with the water that's running off. In terms of the earth berm, again, it's a minimal, I proposed it as going up and down. It's only just enough where needed to keep the water from going off the road. So the best way to really figure that out is to build it in the field as you need to maintain the gutter flow. That's exactly what's been described. I don't see where me spending, tens of hours figuring out on a micro topography level where there's going to be 6 inches of dirt put changes the impact of your analysis of the application. Now, if you feel differently and you tell me that, it's a whole bunch more, but I don't know exactly where that berm at this point without doing, again, a lot of detailed analysis to try to figure it out. For me, it seems that if you understand the scope of what's being proposed, which is to keep the water on the road instead of running off the edge of the road, and then if you, pile a small bit of berm along that, again, at distances that are greater than 25 feet from either of the two resource areas, I could double check, it might be close up on that northerly end, but that's not where you're going to need the berm anyway, because that's where the bank is the highest. So, I think I think you have everything you need for information to close the hearing and vote positively on this.
What if we just don't want to?
Then the town can't fix the drainage problem, and that's where we're at.
Draining just fine.
If you don't, I'm not going to argue with you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question that is.
Could you come up and introduce yourself and
Yes,
do the whole formalities?
My name is Deanne Atherton, and I'm a concerned citizen, and I have a comment and a question about the context of this application. And as you know, the Board of Selectmen adopted a resolution last week asking the parties to come together into settlement talks, and Mr. Cohen referenced those at the beginning of the meeting, having to do with the matter of the emergency installation of the geotubes. And it seems to me, as someone who has followed this matter very carefully, this application and the drainage in this area, as well as another application that you're going to hear, which is for vegetation in this area, involves the same parties, the same properties, and the same issues. And given that, I'm wondering if these matters wouldn't be something that would come within the context of the settlement discussions, and if you shouldn't wait and discuss that with town council and get his advice in executive session on Friday.
Thank you. Those are
I
good
think the
questions.
drainage is a separate issue, but
It's a separate application that we're reviewing the impacts of the installation of 3 separate drainage structures against a vegetated wetland and a coastal bank in its buffer zone. I mean, it's,
I can see the vegetation maybe, but not this. This seems very much by standalone.
I mean, this is
Yeah,
to address a completely,
kind of a different.
it's to deal
part
with
of
the runoff on the road.
I do have a question for Jeff.
Sure.
A good example is when we had the Orange Street property, the Cumberland Farms. I mean, normally with anything where they're installing stormwater treatment to handle an impervious surface, we typically ask that, or they typically apply for stormwater permits.
Well, those stormwater permits are a little bit different than I think. This is a question of applying towards the DEP stormwater policy, and there are certain exemptions that don't require those, and DEP provides, and you can look through their comments online all over the place for where they have requested information in regards to that stormwater policy. But that stormwater policy primarily addresses correct sizing and then obviously removal of, of total suspended solids and oil and separations due. There are things that are required. Usually, like Cumberland Farms is required to file that because that was for a commercial property. Most applications we see are exempt because they're single-family homes are exempted, and that's primarily a majority of our applications.
This is a large enough one. I mean, I don't quite understand why they asked for an exemption, because I think that this would satisfy DEP requirements, but I'm not sure I agree. I think I agree with the format that this is an emergency road repair.
Well, that's how it was filed, and DEP didn't provide any comments contrary from their position that they needed more information or were going to require their policy be enforced. So that's,
So if we
you guys can choose to.
this one would be approving emergency road repair that's not actually road repair? Or?
No, that qualification only refers to the exemptions in the stormwater policy. They're still required to meet all of the standards of the Act and the bylaw. I mean, that DEP stormwater policy doesn't exempt you from any sort of performance standards.
Is there any place where this doesn't meet the standards in the Act and the
I
bylaw?
do want the wetlands delineated properly. I was right there by that Typha. I'm standing right on it. The wetland flag is
When we
10
refer-
feet
we
in.
refer-
You do that in your
reference to the law.
pre-construction survey.
I mean, I do wish as part of the package, we were given better current conditions of the wetlands, certainly.
actually-
But like, separate from conditioning to have them given. I wish they were given, but.
Is there any place where this doesn't meet the standards of the bylaw or the Act?
There are currently no waivers required for this project.
I make a point.
There's no waivers required for this project, even though it's within 25 feet of the wetland. I mean, if you know where the wetland is, how can you say it's not within 25 feet? And work done within 25 feet of the wetland does require waivers.
I understand, currently as it's shown on the plan, for what's there are no waivers required for that project.
In accordance with the
I
law?
think you have a plan that's legally accurate because you have RDA that was accepted by this commission less than 4 years ago. If you would like that updated because the wetland has either moved or was not accurately done before, that's certainly something you can condition as part of the pre-construction. the planning board does this all the time. They require a certain amount of details to give a permit, and then a different amount of engineering before construction starts. And I think that's an excellent model here if you'd like to get better data. But I think you would agree that nothing in that data is going to change anything here. The road is in the same place. The project is in the same place. If the wetland moves 5 feet, it doesn't actually change anything that would happen.
Except the waiver. It would change the waiver request.
That is a legally accepted and binding RDA.
That's an interesting question, if it's Cormac.
I'm not presenting it as if it's an Achilles heel. I'm presenting it to determine if this does go forward, that we can determine the impacts on the wetland. Where the wetland is not going to kill the project. So don't take that in the wrong way. I'm doing this that if this does go through, if they have not adequately determined where the clay layer is, if they pop that clay layer and infiltrate water that normally would have gone to the wetland will be impacted, and your resource standards are in complete inconsistency because the wetland will no longer to function as it previously did. I mean, it's A, B, C to me. And it also seems that why not do it? If they could do it, it actually what might even show them is consistency with this, and then it might actually be able to be approved.
So we have something in front of us that meets the standards.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mike, wait, tell Cormac to explain, please.
You have something in front of you which does not...
Mr. Chairman, as a point of order, can we apply the same rules at each end of the table? And if we're going to have one-on-one debate with some people, can we have one-on-one debate with all people, or can we just not do it at all, period? Thank you.
Do you have a question, Mike?
Well, I do, because the ABC linear sort of progression that we're hearing about here, well, it's the same question that I had when we last talked about this thing. If nothing at all is done, and it's seeming to me that what some of the resistance here is the thing might actually be beneficial to the property owners and perish the thought. But if nothing at all is done, and if the erosion continues, that wetland will not exist. And so A, B, C, and D is the linear progression of the thinking here, and I think we're getting a sort of a half of a half-baked argument. And I think we have something in front of us, it's been in front of us since November, that complies with all of our standards, and I cannot understand why we continue to drag this out, other than we think it might work.
Well, I think
I just want to make a quick comment, or go ahead, sir.
I think there are questions about this, Mike, and I don't think this necessarily is going to affect if this project is approved or not. But it is important. We're doing something new here that we've not seen before of, draining surface water down through past a surface layer, a perch table into a lower water table. And
if the erosion continues, what happens to that perched water table? It all goes over the top of the bank.
I agree, but I think it's important to see how this works, because if we see these in the future, this is an example of one, and if we want to know if it...
I agree with that. We can easily condition that and move right along here. There's no reason why we can't just get that done.
We can ask them to properly, to redelineate the wetland, after we close the hearing.
The point I was going to make is that I don't think it's necessarily going to change the design or whether it gets permitted or not. But I can't think of another application where the plan has an obvious wetland that's in a different location, where the whole plan kind of depends on where that wetland is.
So we can easily move forward and condition that and get that.
But once you have given approval for a plan, you've still given, as far as legally, if you condition for the plan to change after your approval, we've never done that I can recall. Typically, it's a 2-week delay to come back with appropriate plans of the wetland where it's supposed to be. It's not all that difficult to get a soil core in the exact area of the infiltration, which we would ask anyone to do. That doesn't mean I think that it's designed well. That doesn't change whether it be approved. But I would feel more comfortable having appropriate plans with the data to go.
I'm sure, but my only point is if it doesn't change anything, then what is the point of the delay, other than just a delay?
The delay is to have an appropriate plan that actually matches what's on the ground. And I don't think we've ever deliberately
We
given
have-
someone an order for a plan that was.
We have a
this far
legally
off.
binding plan is what we have.
Let me ask a question of the applicants. Is 2 weeks making or breaking this?
So I'm Mr. Chairman, and, you know, well, I'm hearing everything. So let me, you know, go back and continue for 2 weeks, you know, discuss with the clients, with the town, about trying to get you some more information. Again, we, you know, thought that we could rely on an approved boundary. Clearly, that's causing other, you know, concern. I'm hopeful that, you know, if that comes back, I believe everybody here is correct, that, you know, that boundary is legally held, so that's what we held. But that then we don't, you know, hear that, no, okay, now we're in some other situation. But anyway, I don't see any point in continuing this on tonight, discussion. So, you know, we're hoping for an approval so that we can try to fix the stormwater problem in the town. I don't want to sit here and get a denial for the town because you say that I didn't give you a piece of information.
Well, let's do this. Let's get a sense of the commission. If they come back with this new information and an approved, you know, a better plan, can we give Jeff instructions on what kind of,
It might depend on the soil board. But I don't know, ask everybody else.
we think we could
I
have
don't know
an
that I can get a
approval?
soil bore done in two weeks.
Yeah.
It might have to be, you know,
I wait.
you know, the wetland, I can hopefully get done for you.
Is there any other information already which you presented?
This is
for
the
this
closest.
area?
I mean, that's what
That
I
was
went
the
with, you know,
closest.
and again, I don't know that it really is
I
gonna change
remember asking Haley about
the
that.
design of the system, but, again, you know, let's see what, you know, perhaps instead of a, you know, a deep bore, we can do a shallow pit or something. But I don't see being able to, that I see being a considerable delay. We're not gonna be able to get, you know, a rig lined up and out there and able to do, you know, this type of a deep boring for you. The wetland, I hopefully can get somebody on. But, you know, hopefully that'll do it.
Well, I think probably the bigger issue is just how far down is it to the clay layer, so it wouldn't have to be that deep.
I have a suggestion too, Mr. That's in their best interest. Now, one thing that they could do, as long as, from our point of view, as long as it's conditioned very strong, that when they do their pre-construction analysis, or they go out there to dig a hole, small one, to start off with, for the infiltration unit, that then they do the analysis of the stratification of the soils. And if you're not seeing the clay, impervious surface, until 70, you're okay. And you could condition that where that they're going to do one there. Order of conditions has already been issued, but the order has explicit language that says, look, if the clay layer is clearly being punched through, work stops, goes back to the commission.
That's fair.
Mr. Chairman.
That's fair.
That's what I thought the single, like, test one was for. And I thought that was in the plan. I'm sorry, I seem to be getting everything wrong. I thought that was gonna be done first. I think it's still in some
That
of
was
the.
Haley, actually, Haley had it.
It was
That's
just a
fair.
suggestion, right, but.
Well, I don't know what,
I know, I understand.
I think it's a
understand
good
the
idea.
confusion.
I mean, if you're gonna do it, you know.
And then secondly, to resolve the DEP issue, if you, as a request, if you could ask staff to ask DEP, do you consider this an emergency road repair? Are they exempt from the stormwater management policy? And I want to just point out that standard number 3 in the stormwater handbook deals explicitly with groundwater recharge. Many of those standards definitely do deal with pre-treatment and treating the water and TSS, but this basically says, and I quote, that at a minimum, the annual recharge from the post-development site shall approximate the annual recharge from pre-development conditions.
But there's no change there is no pre and post development.
Well, you're developing an infiltration unit
But
that is not mimicking the groundwater recharge.
No, you're not properly applying that standard. That the pre and post development, that assumes you're coming in and building a parking lot. There is no difference in pre and post development
Not a change.
conditions.
Impervious.
Yeah, but the water is not being recharged into the wetland resource. That's why that's created, because they still want the resource area to be recharged with the same amount of water. this is not going to be recharged with the same amount of water. So if you read it literally, I guess you could say, because it's not necessarily development, you're right, but clearly that standard is based upon groundwater recharge, and this is not serving the same amount of groundwater recharge. So I agree with Art in terms of the analysis on that one, but I hope you would respectfully agree with me that it deals with groundwater recharge and it has to equate with the exact, with what happened, with creep.
I mean, I think we are recharging the groundwater. We have an infiltration system.
Groundwater, as defined in the DEP regulations and your own regulations, is the saturation zone. And for this purpose, it also includes perched groundwater level. And you're not recharging the perched groundwater with the same amount of water that is being supplied right now. Thus, that wetland is only there because it's a perched wetland.
You agree.
Yeah, it's a massive wetland, though.
These two are small. The other one, the southern one, is the massive.
I guess the question becomes, so how much water is running over the edge now that instead of running over the edge is going to be going down
That's
the
the
hole?
piece that you're not taking into account. We're going to take the water from the east side of the road that's going over the bank and causing all this damage, and we're taking it back into this wetland. So you're actually going to have more water than you are right now.
You could say that the western side of the road, that's the only thing that
Goes to the
wetland.
right,
Correct.
and now we're taking all of the east side flow,
Put it in there.
catch basins, piping it back over. So again, I mean, getting back to exact quantification on that,
It could be easily done. I see it at planning board all the time.
Okay, so let's stop here, and let's see what, Jeff, what do you have to say?
We're having an argument about something that he simply asked for a continuance to fix some issues, and we were having that for, I mean, I just want to make some progress, either for instructions for what we're getting for more information, or instructions for how you guys want to deliberate or take action on it, instead of spinning in the same place.
Yeah, I'm curious as far as what the commission thinks, if we think additional information would change anybody's vote on this at this point, or,
I don't think it would change my vote.
I'm probably going to have to vote for it.
I would vote for it.
I think it's,
I'll probably vote for it, but I
Mike?
do want to have the correct wetland. I think it's.
I can't imagine how, I think the vice chairman announced it a little while ago, that this information would not change the result. It was just a delaying tactic.
so you're satisfied with?
I think I see what's happening here, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not trying to
Ashley?
make it very clear, I'm not trying to delay, I'm trying to get an appropriate plan on here. That it wouldn't change my vote, I think it would be helpful.
I think we all want we all want the
But
plan to
I'm not,
happen.
I'm just wanting to make sure it's very clear, I'm not just delaying to be delaying. I'm trying to vote on a plan that's appropriate. It's more legal, it almost always helps the applicant if we actually have an appropriate
Yeah,
plan.
so let's
in
get
front
on
of
with it, absolutely.
us. Sorry, Ashley.
I would not deny this plan. Like, it's not going to hinge on more information from
Okay.
me, but I think last meeting wanted more information about the wetlands, and it wasn't necessarily provided for this one, so that's my holdup a little bit, but I don't think I'm,
I actually
Deny
asked
the
for
drainage
soil
system.
work about 6 weeks
Yeah,
ago.
so.
Well, so it sounds like a majority of the commission is good to go on this, and
Continue for 2 weeks with a new plan?
no, I think to
Just
close
condition.
it tonight, and
Well, I would say if we're going to make plan changes, I would prefer to have it open to.
I would too, yep.
Yeah, I would leave it open.
I would, if I may, I think that instead of having plan changes, you go with, as Cormac suggested, a condition.
That's two
that
different
says,
things.
that says, the wetland line, as you've said, is, that's the approved wetland line. Instead of going around and paying somebody, the town's not, whoever's, you get someone to do another wetland, versus you have this approved line, and then have the vote all be the same for a town project. Why not just, that's the approved line that was held from before, it doesn't change the design at all, and then have a condition about what's most important, which it goes back to Commissioner Lafarge's comment as well, that you do the test well first, and to Cormac's suggestion, that as long as it shows the same conditions and the clay, that the project proceeds. And if not, you have to come back for an amended order.
problem is waiver or no waiver. With the appropriate wetland line, you would have a waiver. Without that wetland line, you would not.
We have a legally binding line. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to close the hearing.
The only the plus of redelineating is because you need an accurate pre-project
We can still do
line.
that.
That's what yeah, I think everyone agrees we need that.
Why won't
Mr. Chairman, you have a motion made and seconded.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay. All in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that motion carries with the chair opposed, but it still carries.
Thanks.
And sense of the commission that we should then have a positive order.
Can you also draft a map that a new wetland line is established?
I can condition something for the monitoring
Yeah.
to do that. I'll get creative.
We get better about our RDAs.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Jeff, do you need anything else from us? Okay.
That's right.
Nice, thank you. Like mixing them.
Okay, let's get back into order here. That takes us to Merson at 71 Baxter Road.
I think I put a call into John to see if he's going to appear. I think we could just continue this one to the
Okay, we don't have a
we had
representative.
asked for some more information that we didn't get. But he and I
Okay,
had
so
touch
unless I
base.
hear an objection, we'll continue this to the 4th.
Yep.
Okay, so it would be it. So that was, I don't know how to say this name.
No one does.
At 51 Crooked Lane.
Dave, do you know how to say this name?
I have no idea.
It's your client, Dave. Your client. Come on,
I've never
help
met
us out.
We need to add this to the application material. Please provide a phonetic pronunciation of your name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amidst that one.
David Haynes for the applicant. This is 51 Crooked Lane. It is a request to construct a swimming pool and a cabana associated with an existing house. The swimming pool, the wetland boundary, we flagged it. Lauren Tide reviewed it, had a couple of questions, went out there, back out there with Jeff Carlson, moved a couple of flags, looked at a couple of areas, and this new plan does reflect that new delineation. The construction was adjusted slightly to still meet the 50-foot setback for structures. That is what we are proposing. Also, in Lauren, the pool is here, the cabana is there, the 50-foot line is like this. There is a dry lake stone patio around the pool. That is not considered a structure. There is a existing retaining wall along here that we would like to maintain. It does have a split rail fence on top of it, and that would constitute our swimming pool fence because the 4-foot high retaining wall would be a fence that satisfies building code for swimming pool fences. We did, in Lauren Tide's review, they also pointed out a couple of other things that we were unaware of. This house was approved in 2000. It's on Crooked Lane. It was approved with a septic system. I remember the hearings. It was controversial. It was shoehorned in. It was a septic system within 100 feet of the wetland, and it was done. There was a slightly different wetland delineation, slightly lower in some spots, higher in others. Now we're higher than it was previously. This wetland on the other side of the road was not shown on that plan. The house was constructed, and instead of putting in the septic system, they found a way to connect to the sewer on Duke's Road. They ran a sewer line up Crooked Lane and tied into a sewer up there. Lauren had also pointed out that there is a sunken patio right here with a 3 to 4 foot high retaining wall around it, and that this retaining wall was not on the original plan. That there was a certificate of compliance issued for this. There was an approved retaining wall on this side to contain the grading for the septic system, and where this retaining wall is with the 2000 delineation was outside of 50 feet, so it was not a structure within 50 feet. At that, now with our new delineation, that retaining wall is slightly inside of the 50 feet. This sunken patio, which gives access to the basement, is within 50 feet, and it is considered a structure. So, we are back before you. Another aspect of this proposal is there's invasive species, and there's Tartarian honeysuckle, there's privet, there's Japanese knotweed, and there's Japanese honeysuckle. Japanese honeysuckle, Japanese knotweed in this area, there's Japanese knotweed over in this area, there's Japanese knotweed in here, and there's privet and honeysuckle sort of in the privet buffer. We do have an invasive species. We're proposing to remove those as invasive species by ripping out the honeysuckle and the privet and replanting with arrowwood, winterberry or highbush blueberry. We're planning on spraying the knotweed, which is and I have to apologize, it's written in there as Roundup, and it should have been Rodeo, 25% solution on a windless day with no rain predicted. And then with the Japanese honeysuckle, we wanted to spray that a couple of weeks before we remove it, and then spray it to kill the weeds, and then remove the whole plants from it. The Japanese honeysuckle is located in this area right here that we're planning on ripping that area out and replanting with native species to create a hedge. The HTC wanted to screen the swimming pool. So the way the project comes out now, the other thing is there is a sump pump that discharges between flags 9 and 10 in the buffer zone. That is creating standing water in that area. That was pointed out by Lauren. To alleviate that situation, we are willing to redirect that flow of water to a leach facility in the lawn outside of 25 feet over at the end of the swimming pool. It is not on a plan, but we're happy to do that if the commission wants that done.
Where does that water come from now?
It comes up. Where does it come from?
Yeah, what is it?
It's a sump in the basement.
In the basement.
It's a very high water table. The other thing we are asking for, which reminds me, is we are asking for a waiver for the 2 foot to the water table and to do temporary dewatering, just temporary dewatering to install the swimming pool.
Where would you dewater to?
We're going to pump it over to a silt sack up in front of the house, or dig a basin over in this area and let it infiltrate, or a dirt bag, and pump it into a dirt bag and then let it bleed out over the ground. And then there will be no permanent dewatering of this area, so there won't be the water table. And also the redirecting of the sump pump over to this area will maintain the water level in the area. But we want to put it over here so we're not just recycling it back into the basement. We do need a waiver for the dewatering. We also have a set of steps that we'll propose from the sunken patio up into the swimming pool area. That is within 50. That is the only new structure within 50. However, the old structures we're now trying to legitimize.
Okay.
And the existing retaining wall, we'd like to be able to maintain it, we'd like to be able to maintain the retaining walls around this. I've asked for a waiver in that basically the project as a whole, with the removal of the invasive species and with it not being on the septic as it was originally proposed, is an overall improvement to the whole scenario. I was using that just for my little steps, and now we're trying to expand into this. This is basically, these retaining walls do prevent grading that goes out. It could be built without a structure there. It is it's a depression, it's not elevated. I'd just like to be able to maintain what's there and was built without a permit. I'm representing the buyer, not the seller, and we'll just sort of a curveball I get hit with it.
Any questions?
Was the basement entrance part of the original plan?
I have no idea. There was no sunken patio like shown on the original plan.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was I have no idea.
Yeah. And instead of stairs, you want to do you want to do like a timbered retaining wall around the stairs, or just as a free set of flight of stairs?
There's already a set of stairs coming up, and we just want to continue it up, and it would be freestanding.
Freestanding space underneath.
I'm not concerned about spraying the invasive plants anywhere in the wetland. I mean, it might be fine over here, but
They're not in the wetland. The Japanese knotweed that we would be spraying is right in the vegetative buffer, right in through here. It's not on the wetland now, and this is not in the wetland, and none of it is in the wetland. And the removal of the honeysuckle and the privet are not in the wetland either, but we just want to physically remove them and not spray them.
So what you, sorry,
no, that's
are you spraying like on the leaves, or are you doing like a cut and drip?
We were going to spray the leaves. We can do cut and drip if the commission would prefer that. Everybody here, I'm sure, knows how difficult it is to get rid of knotweed.
So the idea is spraying in the buffer zone, but not spraying in the wetland itself?
Right.
And if there's any of the invasives you're going to be dealing with in the wetland itself?
Nothing in the wetland.
Because in there we usually go with the cut and drip, but in the buffer zone, we might allow the spraying.
And David, you're saying you're going to spray first and then pull them close to the water?
For the Japanese honey, which is just a mass of vines in this area, we were going to spray it first, let it get into the roots, kill the roots, and then remove the plants. With the Japanese knotweed, you're just going to...
Yeah, because I know usually when it's, less than a half an inch in diameter, they say you can spray the leaves and it does all right, but once it gets bigger, the uptake of the chemical, I think, is better with the cut and drip and timed after Labor Day, like to actually make a dent in it.
In which species is that?
On the
In the
vine?
Japanese knotweed.
Yeah.
Oh, and the knotweed.
Yeah,
The knotweed,
to be fairly straight to procedure on that, I think would be better for everybody, probably.
I think I would approach that knotweed if you're going to attempt the spray with a two-pronged approach of using Renovate in the spring, which is approved for use in wetlands or wetland buffers, and it's a broadleaf specific, and then, if necessary, do a follow-up with rodeo in the fall, and that way you can, have a double impact. And then I would also think about, to minimize drift and, high spraying and stuff, it'd be to go in there and, cut it down in the dormant season and get all the junk out of there. And then maybe, do a few cuttings in the growing season. And then, toward the end of the season, let it grow back. And, and then have it be, small, which, which reduces your drift issues, but it also cuts your leaf area down. But if you did a dual treatment of, spring and fall, that,
Have that spelled out in a best management practice?
I just made it up. I don't know.
Sounded good.
Well, that's something, Mr. Chairman, we can certainly condition how that's going to be treated. I mean, they've applied for the activity, so we can condition however we best feel that activity meets our performance
I was
standards.
thinking renovate didn't work on that week. I thought that's what I was.
Well, Ask Mr. Perry, he's,
If I could, correct Bruce Perry, if you use the renovate spraying it in the spring, it's down short. You really don't have to go to the rodeo in the fall because they will knock it down and keep it short. It takes 2 or 3 applications during the growing season. So, and if you miss some plants and they get tall, wait till the fall and then clip and drip with the rodeo. But I would recommend spraying with the rodeo in the fall.
It never works. Yeah.
That takes out everything. It's not very selective. That's what
yeah, it's not selective at all, yeah.
They take the dead stalks out like you talked about, and then spray it as it comes up. Short once you start throwing leaves, so you just keep after it. And you have to go back to the rodeo. And renovate is designed to reduce in ponds and stuff, so it's quite.
Mhm.
Renovate doesn't work on Phragmites. That's good.
It's, or growing is a trademark name, but I renovate like herbicide.
And Bruce, what concentration did you use when you were spraying the,
The spraying is about 3%.
yeah, I thought 25% sounded kind of high.
Yeah. That's for rodeo.
That was for
Rodeo. That still seems
That's
about
still
high.
Spray with rodeo. It's 25% for the clip and drip part.
So
3%
3%.
with the foliar application.
Usually it's quite a bit lower concentration, so I would just read the label directions.
Again, that's something we've
We
conditioned
can
that
condition
before.
the, be.
I've written that condition many
directions.
times.
We didn't get you a management plan.
Have staff approval on. Any other questions for David? Anything from the public, for that matter? Nothing else from the commission? Okay, Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
Yes, sir.
David, would you like to close? Do I have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, APG DRS Realty Trust at 80 and 84 Walwinet Road.
Mr. Chairman, Gasper, on behalf of the applicant, based on the site visit, I'd like to request a continuance so I can get you some more
Thank you.
information.
Sure.
Let's see here, objection will continue this for 2 weeks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, the Land Bank at 72 Washington Street.
Now we're cooking.
Hi, I'm Rachel Freeman, I'm representing the applicant, and I'm back to discuss the property at 72 Washington Street. The land bank recently purchased this property. It's about a little more than a tenth of an acre, and it contains a coastal beach and abuts Nantucket Harbor to the north and the east. And the entire property is within land subject to coastal storm flowage. We're proposing to remove the single-family dwelling and revegetate the southwest section of the property with beach grass and hopefully install 2 posts on the beach to tie up dinghies to. The goal for this property is to provide public access to the water, and it's contiguous with the land bank's undeveloped property to the southeast. And basically, we would like this property to look like a with beach grass at the top. We're also proposing to put a split rail fence on the southwest edge of the property so that nobody's inclined to drive onto the beach from Washington Street. Some of the concerns that you had came up last time were how much fill was going to be used. And we'd like to use no more than 65 cubic yards of compatible fill in beach material. And this was calculated using the volume of the crossways. And I believe it'll be less than that, but currently that's about the maximum that we would ever use. And then the other thing is how we're going to plant the beach grass. And we're planning to plant it in staggered rows, 18 inches on center, to match the area covered by the existing vegetation on the property to the southeast. And we will not be using fertilizer because we feel that it will take regardless. We're planning on installing a silt fence on the beach side of the beach grass during the first season of growth to prevent flooding from affecting that new grass.
And, sorry to interrupt, Rachel, but would you be doing any irrigation of that, temporary irrigation of it?
No. I will come back from them if it doesn't.
You wouldn't need it.
We will not be planting it in the height of the summer. My understanding of beach grass is that it does well in the cooler seasons, and it should be fine to start then. So,
Get it planted by tax day.
exactly.
Really?
The last thing that I wanted to bring up was our discussion about tying up posts and installing posts on the beach. I went back down to the property and I took a look around. Basically, the problem is that that area becomes littered with dinghies and kayaks regardless of whether or not you put something there or not. And so the land bank feels that if we actually install these 2 posts, then we're providing a location not in the beach grass for people to tie up a dinghy or a kayak. And then because we have a policy of removing kayaks or dinghies from the beach on November 15th, and we don't allow them until April 15th, that we'll be actually maintaining that area and providing a benefit to the resource area by keeping the boats off of the resource area for the majority of the year. We did entertain the idea of using the posts that were under the decking, and I included a picture.
Yeah, we know.
Yep.
Yeah.
That shows that there's a large exposed concrete footing, and we feel like a post hand dug into the beach would actually have less of an impact to the resource area.
Yeah.
In lieu of the posts, we feel that any sort of dinghy rack would actually be more of an impact. So I think that was everything I wanted to bring up. Any
Okay.
questions?
Any questions for Rachel? Anything from the public on the land bank on Washington Street? Seeing none, Jeff, we have everything we need to close.
Yes, sir.
Rachel, you ready to close the hearing? I have that motion.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
We're all together again.
Okay, Goldberg at 156 and 158 Orange Street.
And I have,
Good evening, Mark Rich from Site Design Engineering, representing the applicants. The applicant is actually the property owner at 156 Orange Street. We have received a letter endorsing the portion of the work that will take place on the land bank's property at 158 Orange Street. What you have before you is a fairly straightforward application. There is an existing set of stone steps, brick walkway, wooden pier that straddles the property line. And we are requesting to remove the portion that's on the land bank property and shift everything over onto our property. It was a shared property back when it was Mike Bachman's house. Basically, it's disturbance area-wise, it's going to be an in-kind replacement. We're just literally sliding everything over onto our lot. There is going to be a temporary split rail fence installed before this work takes place, just to keep people using the land bank property off of the Goldberg property. And when the work is done, we're proposing a permanent split rail fence right along the edge of the relocated pathway. The resource areas on site are a salt marsh, a very irregularly shaped coastal bank that we discussed at length a few months back when we did some other permitting work on this property. And that's pretty much it. In terms of the pier, again, the pier is existing and properly licensed. We're just going to move it over so that the shore perpendicular portion is on our property.
Otherwise, it's an in-kind replacement, same size post, same dimensions. We're also proposing to remove the half of the pier that is on the land bank side of the line. So we'll actually end up with a smaller overall pier footprint when this is done. This portion's going away, this part will be rebuilt, and this will slide over onto our side of the line.
What does the split rail fence going?
The split rail fence, we're proposing to take down to the pier.
Would there be chapter 91, so people have to be able to cross over if they're walking? So it's not going to go, people can still get across your pier.
There's an existing license for that. I apologize, I don't know what the public access component is of that license.
Can we hear it down here, please?
I was just saying, there's an existing Chapter 91 license in place for that structure. Obviously, when it moves, that will have to get amended to reflect the change in that condition. But at that time, I would say if there's a public access component that's added as far as some sort of access way over, then I think that would be an appropriate time to come back and amend any permit they got from here to address any requirements of that
Just
license.
kind of giving you a heads
we'll
up
make sure
that you
that we'll
might
be-
want to stop it so that people can still get
Yeah.
across at the lower half. I understand having it
Yeah, we'll be in compliance to make sure that there is adequate public access.
Since it is land bank right on the other side, you have to be more aware.
I was going to actually suggest that, given the state of the vegetation down along the walkway, and really on both sides down there as it approaches the pier, it's really pretty much bare dirt down there now, and if that should actually be cordoned off for,
It's illegal.
just even to let it revegetate.
It's more bare muck than anything.
Yeah.
If you've ever had the misfortune of
We
stepping
can
out
ask them to
there.
revegetate some areas, but you can't prevent, someone should be able to walk the harbor all the way from Grant Point to.
Well, they
Nantucket
could
to-
if they just kind of walked around it by about 7 or 8 feet. I mean, I don't know if it's a,
Well, part of the problem in this area, the reason it's so devoid of vegetation, is the way the creek comes in. Whenever there's a high water storm event, all of the debris, and
Oh,
it's
so
not,
it's just-
wreck. It's all kinds of harbor junk, buoys, all kinds of stuff just comes in there and buries that area, sometimes several feet deep. And the property owner is actually often, pretty much every year, they have somebody come in and take out the buoys, the plastic totes, the occasional seal carcasses, and various other things that end up being trapped right in this area.
okay, so it's an ongoing problem.
It's been a problem for years there.
It
Okay.
looks like a
Dinghies,
wreck.
kayaks.
I have a question that's a little off from this particular part of the plan, but do you have any soil tests for this property? Because when we did the site visit, it was noticeable to me that there was fertilizer kind of in the beds and the lawn, and just since you're doing another project here, it would be nice to see that for me.
We haven't done any soil testing, nothing's been done that I'm aware of. This site has been developed and landscaped, both of these properties for a number of years. I'm not really sure what's been going on as an ongoing condition. When we filed the most recent application, we didn't request any additional fertilizer use or irrigation on the property. And we're not asking for any
Well,
now.
I think we basically have a condition on everything, and that,
Right.
Well, they're required by our regulation to follow the Article 68 BMP.
So they
That's
can't
part of our-
really put any phosphate down there.
Right, and I'm just
Without a
wondering,
soil
since they're
test,
putting in a project and there was fertilizer that was fairly noticeable, maybe if you could do a soil test, or we could see some, just a goodwill of the property owner.
If there was noticeable evidence of fertilizer, we can certainly inform the applicant and have them inform whoever their landscape contractor is that it's not appropriate in this area. But I haven't been out to the
Yeah.
site in quite some time.
Just because I'm picturing, you're going to dig it up and move stuff around, and then fertilizer's getting closer to the water when you're doing that, and, just a thought.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything from the public? Yes, Eric.
Eric Savetsky, the director of the land bank, a butter to the property. The reason this is, part of the reason this is before you is that the dock, the walkway out to the dock and the dock are both have a joint easement between both properties that sits right on the property line, half on each side of on each property. And when the land bank purchased the property on the right side, now we've got the public and a private property owner and an easement problem, because putting the public on that easement area, the dock, would overburden the easement rights that were created between two private parties. So we're trying to find a solution to separate the situation. And what we're contemplating, what's not before you tonight, is that the land bank will hopefully file in early February for some form of replacement for what we're giving up here. The moving over onto the Goldberg property, of that portion, we're fine with. And I believe my commission is fine with what we'd like to do probably is propose an elevated walkway in a little further over towards the Otison property, to go out from where there's a timber retaining wall just before you get onto the marsh, and have that go out to about the edge of where the water starts, the actual creek where the peak drops off into the creek, and have it terminate there so that people could walk out to the edge, basically maybe a slight teeing at the end, a little bit. That's along the lines of what we're thinking of, not to maintain or try to move the other portion of the dock over and forego the dock, because we don't feel the property. We don't envision wanting to have people drive down to the very end of the property, down where the house is now, with boats and things like that. I don't think the property is appropriate for that. Our plan is to have people parking up at the street and walk down to this park, which would be more park-like, and enjoy it with in a non-boating fashion. If people want to launch boats, the end of Washington Street's a much more appropriate place to do that kind of thing. But I just wanted to make clear that we won't consent to any of the work happening on the land bank property until we go through the process with you guys with what we'd like to see as a replacement for this. And Paul is here representing the land bank as well, if you have any questions, or if Paul wants to add anything.
Under the plan as community use dock, but it would become a community use dock.
Well, that's a
That's
different
not us.
application for a different day when we actually
Yeah.
see what it looks like and where it sits.
So we just have to look at this plan as it sits here, and
It's useful information, I would say,
Yeah.
to have,
Sure it
but
is.
yeah, knowing what your
You
plan
might
is.
look into the chapter 91 license, because you've got one license right now, so you'd have to go for a second license.
If it's into the water, but if it stops shy of the water,
I don't think that dock has an annual chapter 91 license. If it is, it's unrecorded against the title of the property.
I know it used to.
It did. Both Jeff and I have looked at all the licenses from the town.
So it's not,
It may not be recorded, but I know it exists.
so it's not on the record title. The land bank property, obviously, it's the Bachman, it's the Bachman property. So, Mike permitted it. Jeff probably permitted it.
Before my day.
All right, but, this is a certificate, it's a land court piece, and it's not recorded against the certificate of title.
No surprise.
What was it about doctors being worse patients than they're doing? Surveyors being worse surveyors?
we'd also welcome any feedback or direction on our moving forward with the application that we're coming with.
The intent of the land bank property would be an elevated, essentially what we're calling an elevated walkway now. So it wouldn't be a dock, it'd be an elevated walkway, similar to the ones that have been done on Monomoy
It depends on how far you go. You
Oh,
go
well,
feet
yeah.
high of water, then it'll.
Again, before we get too
That's the
far
different thing.
afield onto
Yeah.
a project that we're not reviewing,
Yep.
let's finish with the one that we are reviewing. I think we hear the intention is for the land bank to retain some right to attempt to permit a walkway on their property, to replace the one that is being relocated in this case.
Understood.
But we're also reviewing the project on the Goldberg property.
Can I make one more comment?
Sure.
So, with regard to this project, I wouldn't want to see any net benefit of removing the land bank portion. That should sort of be reserved for the land bank application, as opposed to this project should stand on its own, not include what's being removed from the land bank property as far as net benefit with regard to, or continue the hearing until we file.
Well, I think this is pretty much replaced, I mean, it's really a moving what's there. So I guess the question would,
This portion, the existing structure, if I may quickly, is it's getting on it to the end of its useful life. If you walk out there, you question how many drinks you've had because the world sways a little. So we're proposing, obviously, to move the shore perpendicular part, but we're only proposing to rebuild this part because it's on our side of the line and within our control. We're not proposing to we're proposing to remove out of goodwill, the portion that's kind of in bad shape on the other side, but we're not, trying to claim credit for it. Our work is basically an in-kind replacement. We're just shifting a few feet. So we don't feel that we're getting, there's no net benefit or detriment out of the work we're proposing.
To protect their rights, is it better if he does not remove that legally for them? And I don't think that you're asking for a net benefit. So.
That's some plan work shenanigans, but I don't think it really makes a significant difference for either way.
We can also rebuild our portion and leave the other portion as is. We don't have, or remove it at a later time. We're just, what we're asking for is to rebuild the part that we have control over rebuilding, on our side of the line.
Again, I would say especially anything that relates to any sort of Chapter 91 permitting, whether it's amending or redoing the license or whatever is going to happen on the land bank property, is, I don't want to be crass by saying this, but it's their problem to figure out. I mean, they don't have really net benefit provisions.
So what's at issue here for our jurisdiction for us?
The direct impacts of relocating the walkway, the 4 feet.
Yeah, do we have anything on that?
have on that is revegetation. It's lawn, so you're just going to replant lawn in there?
Thank you.
Well, we will, the portion that we're abandoning is on land bank property, and we can replant it as lawn or as whatever they would like to have planted there, whatever they feel is appropriate. It's currently lawn adjacent to it. We can seed it as lawn for the time being, and whatever they decide to move forward to, or we can do some sort of more appropriate native planting if they feel that's appropriate. But it's on their side of the property, so we need some input from the property owner to that.
That may be something too. I mean,
We could just have Jeff approve that.
Well, we could do that, or I mean,
Come back to your fertilizer issue.
I mean, either way, if that's something that they need to work out, or you guys would like to see some sort of protocol put together for how they're going to revegetate it. Obviously, it's on someone that's consented to some work, but would probably have some input. I mean, that I don't want to try to condition someone else's consent to something specific. So that may be something. If that's a piece of information you're looking for, that may also give the land bank an opportunity to provide some more comment for what they're planning to do on their side of the line as it relates to this project. I don't know. I mean, to be perfectly honest, in a perfect world, we've got both applications at the same time.
I think it would be better to
It would have made it very simple, but
have it at the same time as far as for the.
I mean, I think if we can address all those other issues, I think getting that information or getting the Goldbergs and the land bank to come up with a revegetation plan in the meantime is something that I think is certainly doable for the next hearing.
Okay.
So we're thinking we shouldn't close?
Should probably continue this.
I'm thinking for a minute.
Did we hear anything from our friends at Heritage yet?
No.
Oh,
I think we have about a day to hear. We filed with them on the 22nd or 23rd of December, so we have a day or possibly two.
Yeah, but we're still waiting to hear from them.
okay, so we can't close it anyways.
Right, and we've got our Heritage jurisdiction is somewhere, I think,
Yeah, it runs through the middle of the dock.
it runs through the middle of the dock, so a portion, the dock replacement portion is
And the good thing is, I consider this a replacement of the dock in kind, so you don't abut against the no new docks and piers of the harbor. So I think you're fine. I'm a little worried for the landlord. But they're a community, and that's their problem, and they'll figure it out.
So we'd be happy to carry this over. We have to anyway for Heritage, and in the meantime, we can try to work out a revegetation protocol on their side, and I don't know, perhaps Paul will be able to.
Well, you might want to talk to Jack Wiggum with Urban Harbors Institute. It might be something I've run by him or Jeff in more detail.
We can sort that out. But are there any other issues that we want to raise?
Any other questions from either the commission or the public on this project?
I have one question. Just all hand dug posts?
Yeah, they're currently 4x4 posts.
Yeah.
So they'd be hand dug. Pretty about as minimal impact as.
No footings or anything on this thing?
No footings in there. At least there's no evidence of footings right now.
Probably
Some
not.
of the posts you can.
To get all of the stonework moved out, though, that's going to take, are you going to have to use a little baby backhoe, or?
They may need to, for some of the stone steps, they may need to use a small skid steer or little excavator mounted on a bobcat, but it'd be pretty minimal, and that would be the stone steps are outside of the 25. There's some, this is a brick walkway, but that could all be hand addressed. So some of the stonework may need a little bit more oomph to move. That would be outside of the 25.
And the silt fence is with it?
The proposed silt fence runs along here and ends at, there's a little timber bulkhead here. And the property's, it all tends to slope off in this direction.
So we're going to continue this?
Yes.
You ready to, if there's no other comments or questions, unless I hear an objection, we'll continue this for 2 weeks. Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, Baxter Road property owners. 85, 87, 91, 93, 97, 99, 101, and 105 Baxter Road.
For the applicant, architect Sparrow, Blackmore Associates. I'm before you tonight for the application to vegetate the face of the coastal bank along Baxter Road, the properties that you just listed. We had a site visit there on Monday, so most of you are familiar with the site. The plan does show, much like the other one, I've added to this plan the top of bank as it exists in December 2014. And what we're proposing to do here is to add clean compatible sand fill in order to make a uniform plantable sand surface. We then use jute netting on the slope. We're proposing for a couple of rows of coir logs to be staked on top of that, run parallel with the bank, to serve to help stabilize some of that sand from sliding, as well as to help diffuse any water that's running off, so that we don't get the channel flow that's creating the kind of gullies that you see out there. There's no real, the purpose of the coir, purely biodegradable logs, is not erosion control with respect to they won't be acted on by any water or wave action from below. And then the entire surface would be planted with American beach grass plugs. The sand would be delivered using the same conveyor belt system that they're currently using to provide the nourishment sand. Once the bank is vegetated, and then the nourishment sand needs to be provided for the geotube separate project, that would be done the way that it was described and permitted in that project using the tubes and the trestles. I checked on that. So once it's vegetated, they won't just they'll go to that manner of sand delivery for that project. With respect to I have a handout for you, which really I think shows the successful plantings that have been done just to the south, and that's really what this project is. Is trying to do. These are just photographs of this immediate area, and showing that we're just trying to get beach grass to try to address the wind and rain erosion that's happening on the bank. So this I think is just summarizes, if you want to flip through. A couple of pictures. It shows, the second page shows, it's a different project site, but it'll be essentially the same type of methodology, where they're just trying to create the uniform surface and then put down the jute netting and then put in the plugs. I think that it meets we have requested a waiver for the project just because of the work and the activity in the resource area. I think that it meets your performance standards, and specifically goes to a net benefit in the section of the regulations that states that, I think it's best to probably just read one sentence, I know you're all familiar with it, but that, directly from 205A1, that vegetation tends to stabilize a coastal bank and reduce the rate of erosion due to wind and rain runoff. The vegetated banks are critical to reducing wind and rain erosion and for providing important habitat and biodiversity. So that's really the goal of the project, is to, exactly as stated in the regulations, try to get this grass going. We are proposing to use a temporary irrigation system to water the grass. I found from really all of my beach grass planting projects that you really do need to provide water. You just can't depend on Mother Nature for new plantings. The plantings are just too delicate in some cases. If you get a drought or a dry period, that they may not survive. I would say that it would also to keep in mind in terms of it would be very carefully monitored. Clearly, the situation there, very sensitive to how much water is going down the bank to cause additional erosion. So it would be just enough water to create, again, the effect that, just what the plants need, so that we can get the kind of grass growth that you see on just a couple properties to the south. One point I think just to point out as well, of course, with the water in terms of what would there be resource area impacts abutting on the Atlantic Ocean. I don't see that there's it's the same type of concern there may be for the harbor, or I don't see how this is going to have any negative impact, if you will, down to adjacent resource areas from this installation and this application. And with that, I'd be happy to try to address any questions or concerns that you may have about methodology or potential impacts.
What makes the sand compatible with what's there? Why is it compatible?
It would be the same as that's condition, I suppose, of the other project, in that you'd be using pit sand, and you could get a the sieve analysis. I suppose that the bank is highly variable in terms of its composition, and we wouldn't be, at least I wouldn't be proposing to try to come up with any kind of a mix, but just to use pit sand that would really mostly be compatible to
the sand that's in the bank as well as to the beach, but I do concur that there's a, you know, wide range of variability in the bank itself.
I have a question about the fiber rolls.
Yes.
You included a BMP? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to be sure, I wasn't sure if Mr. LaFarge did anything.
No, I'm just trying to understand, because the places that are kind of hard are like mud, you know, clay, whatever
Right.
it is, you know, many different things, and I don't know what the best, you know, it's not really compatible, it may be, really makes it work, I don't know what,
Yeah.
you know, but certainly you want to make it work.
Your
you know.
point is well taken, and I think that perhaps it's better described as clean pit sand. That's what the proposal would be to use.
And you had described it yesterday, I think, as a veneer, so it's just,
I think that it's more than that, and I wanted to certainly clarify that at the meeting, and that's what I wanted to show the photos as well. It would be filling to create a uniform surface, so there would be more filling than just a veneer.
so you have to get the
Some of the
conveyor everywhere pretty
You
much.
got it. That's
right?
exactly right, and that's what I checked with the contractor to be sure, because I knew there was questions that had come up. So the one thing that we can do is that the way that conveyor is set up is that the wheels are 25 feet back from the bank, from the top. So they would then position the conveyor as needed to then, you know, in different positions, but keeping those wheels the 25 feet back from the top of the bank. Certainly there would be, you know, several conveyor positions to then deliver the sand.
And you need to have a certain veneer everywhere? I mean, even on the stuff that's the furthest out, you still need a...
No, I think what's most important is to have the uniform, you know, essentially a uniform surface that you can work on, which I think is shown on the picture on the second page. That's what you'd be looking to create. I don't think that wherever that highest point out is probably going to be what controls in terms of, you know, for filling. I don't think it's going to be anything, you know, perfectly smooth, if you will. But I think that I don't want there to be any surprise or you know, feeling that it was. I did say a veneer at the site visit, but I think more accurately, there's more filling than a simple veneer.
So you could actually calculate then, if you're doing it on a uniform surface, you could calculate at the top here how much sand you'd be putting, like where that big gap is.
Yep.
Trench. Now you are going to be putting several hundred cubic yards of sand there.
Oh, this
compared to next to it.
Yes. I mean,
Is there a time target on when you'd be looking to get the planting of the beach grass in?
April.
Yeah, 'cause I know it works a lot better if it's done by...
April is absolutely, you know, we're very much, you know, really, you know, the storm, we can't do this planting without the stormwater being addressed. Otherwise, it's just a waste. There's no doubt about that. So that was really, came in, the stormwater we didn't really expect was going to be, you know, end up sort of the way that it had. But, you know, we need to address the stormwater, whether it's with, hopefully, the system, you know, but other than if that doesn't get approved or something different. But you can't do this without doing something about the water that's gushing over the top.
I was going to go back to the fiber logs real
Yes.
quickly because you included a BMP in here.
Mm-hmm.
And next door, I think they use the jute matting, which I think works
Mm-hmm.
better when you're trying to do the beach grass. My concern with the fiber logs in our packet, in this very page here, I think it's let's see the page. Yeah, it basically says in the stuff you gave us that these fiber logs should not be used in this case. It says, don't use it in any area. Fiber rolls should not be used on slopes subject to creep, sloughing, or landslide. If they're not properly staked and trenched in, remember I was talking the other day about how fiber logs can be transported by high flows.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also says it gives you a slope average. So the picture that they show is a very low slope. I just think that the core logs, and that's the only thing I'm talking about now. I think like the jute netting, and sand, jute netting, then vegetation might work. I honestly to God think this core logs are going to roll right down. I don't think they're, even with a 10-foot stake, they're not going to hold.
So and I talked to the contractor, you know, about that. I suggested that that has done the other projects and, you know, used these, is that, that he certainly needs to be done in the area only above the geotubes. In other words, where you don't have the slide because the base is.
But your slope is just too steep according to your own BMPs that you
But,
gave.
well, it says 4 to 1, and we can calculate exactly, you know, what it is, but that's part of why that fill is gonna happen, is to create the more gentle slope. You know, whether it's exactly what that slope is going to be, you know, we can look at that, but that's the thinking there, is that it's gonna help, to stabilize the overall slope by having those, so that the end won't slide as far. It's a, you know, almost a terracing effect for both holding the sand as well as for breaking up the water to diffuse
if
the
it
water.
does
You're going to
It's
have
gonna be-
netting on top of it,
And
too.
no, the tubes will go on top of the netting.
Right, but there is going to be netting
There's
still.
netting.
But if it goes, it's gonna take everything at once. I mean, I don't agree with the engineering on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think your own, I think what it says here is agreeing with saying that this shouldn't be used in this.
I can, you know, revisit it with the
So
contractor.
as usual,
Yeah, I think,
He's, you know, I mean, I've not used the fiber roll in a situation like this. You know, I was assured by a contractor who has, been, you know, other situations that
On the same slope.
on the same kind of
these are
slope,
pretty small diameter rolls, right?
Yeah, these are,
12 to 20 inches.
Oh, they're that big. Oh,
Yeah.
they're
I was
big
talking
size.
to Art the other
they're
day, I said,
small,
well, you
yeah.
could excavate into it and actually sit in a trench, which is what they recommend in the package.
Right, and, you know, and I think that's how it would go. You know, I
I
think
think
that
you'd
you're.
have to put it in the trench.
I think that you're going to have, I can get you some more, let me get some clarification on that for you as well.
yeah, I thought they were smaller.
Well,
Yesterday, I thought when we were talking, they were more like job site rolls, like you're saying, it's a
Like the
stop and
8
shop.
foot, right,
Yeah,
but
8-inch ones.
Same
but-
type.
Yeah,
a little
okay,
bit
that's what you're
bigger,
getting
right?
at.
In other words,
But they are
what I-
bigger.
You know, is that it's not a filled wrap
Yep.
or anything, it's that solid quarry, again, you know, biodegradable.
Well, yeah, no, I like that, I just honestly don't believe it's gonna stay in place. I want whatever you put there to actually stay there.
I'd suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we, as usual, caution ourselves that we don't substitute our engineering judgment for the engineers, that we focus our impact to our discussion on resource impact. And
Mike, this is exactly what the applicant put in our package.
I gather the applicant's going to be coming back again on a continuation is what he's asked for, and I was just wanted to raise that caution that we not substitute our engineering for the engineers.
I have 2 questions, I guess, along the same lines. I did pick up on what Sarah just brought up. It stuck out to me right away because yesterday during the site visit, I am having trouble picturing how these things will stay in place as well. So whether you give us a schematic of how the stake will actually be in based on, you know, the slope or whatever, just because I'm having trouble wrapping my head around how they're going to stay in place. And then I guess I have an issue with the statement that there'll be no adverse impacts to like wildlife and fishing and things, because undoubtedly there will be some impact putting pit sand, which is kind of like a dead sand, onto a bluff that does have, you know, microbiota and stuff that does feed the food chain. So I just don't want to miss that we are actually impacting it in some way.
Question, does that come to, so in our regulatory standard, we talk about adverse impact, and then it goes on and defines greater than negligible, and then it goes on and says, defines negligible as small enough to be disregarded. Are you talking about that sort of thing?
No,
In other words,
I think it's so many feet of bluff, and how many millions of microbiota live in there, you're basically going to suffocate it all. So, to me, I don't think that you can say there is no adverse impact to that bluff, you know, without the proper science to say that. And I can try and...
No adverse, just, all I want to raise, I don't know a better forum or time to have sort of this discussion, but it is, each one of those has very specific meanings, so it sort of gets back to the issue we had earlier on about a legal legally binding plan versus a plan that makes any sense to us, and it's the no adverse impact has one highly technical meaning, and it has another sort of general meaning in conversation and how one gets at that. And in other words, a single grain of sand does not make it maybe small enough to be disregarded in some of our minds, whereas 10,000 cubic yards would not be, and somewhere in there is what that is. And so I think it'd be an interesting thing for us to make our meetings more efficient in terms of just what we mean when we use that phrase is all I was just touching on here.
Well, and that goes back to knowing how much sand he's using. We could make that decision that whether it's an impact or not if we knew how much total sand they're adding. So that's why, I mean, now it's a lot more sand than he was talking about at the site visit yesterday. And so, you know, if you've got a veneer that's 2 feet thick, which might not be deep enough to hold the beach grass, versus 10 feet of, 3 cubic yards per linear foot, that's a big difference. So I think that quantifying how much sand, and I think that actually is beneficial for you all, because that'll tell us how often they have to move the conveyor belt, how many different sites they're going to be putting it over, and how much you can't get into the beach.
Yeah, getting at what is an adverse impact.
Right. And then you can quantify it. I think that talks specifically to that.
And we have to keep in mind what are actually our protected interests.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, again, when you get down to protecting species, usually we're concerned with rare and listed species. Then does this impact, how much of a larger food chain are we really impacting? But I think we had a project where we actually introduced say mycorrhizae into the roots of planting beach grass to try to restore some of the microbes. And again, I think that's not always wouldn't be a bad idea, is to seed some of that stuff into this stuff to get some of it started.
That's a great example where that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to I'm just trying to understand how would you irrigate? How could it be done in a way that doesn't cause the same problem that the drainage might be causing?
Very limited water.
I mean, how are you getting the water to?
Sprinkler hoses.
Just on the top?
No, you'd have to go power way down and put, sprinkler, like temporary sprinklers on a stake that spray head.
But then it would have a hose.
A hose, sure.
Yeah. So
surface hose, not like a garden hose.
Right, not an irrigation system.
Do you have any idea how many of those, how many hoses and how many sprinklers you need over the whole face of the block?
No, I didn't work on that.
So it's not like hand water. There's no way that hand water.
No, not that we couldn't do that.
But it's going to be to their benefit to apply the minimum amount
With individual
of
water
Most
and
beach grass is growing on its own without any irrigation.
one at a time.
One at a time.
For establishment. Oh, sorry.
No, that's right. Thank you.
It's for it's really
I
for the
understand.
establishment purposes.
But beach grass does naturally establish itself.
Right, but when we're going to come and, do such a large scale type of a planting, that you could then lose it all if, if natural conditions, and I understand that, but it's sort of that it's these plants are delicate as you're aware, when they're right being transplanted, and but I can work on some more information on that.
And beach grass does, of course, establish by seed, but once you get a few plants, most of it is then asexual.
Yeah, we don't. I know that the other nearby applicant has proposed seed, but we definitely want to use water.
I think we had a question on how are you going to plant them? How are you going to access the
Again, it's just going just like they did this project.
rappelling?
Those guys can
Walk
up and down that, hands and knees, and they use like a piece of rebar to poke a hole, and then put a plug in. They got these little rebars with like a little rough piece of rubber they put on them, and it's still the rubber, so that's the depth, and they poke a hole, and then they put in a plug, and they lay it over. What I've seen, not this project, but the other ones I've done on the North Shore, is that the length of the rebar is the spacing. So they go like this, then they lay it down, and it gives them the spacing to the next one, and then that's that's the methodology that I've seen used. Because you gotta move along, you know.
There'd be a lot of
Is
plugs in
the
this.
slope next door shallower or the same?
I would expect it would be, you know, very, very similar.
Do you have, sorry, do you have any idea what the projection onto the beach, how far out from the base?
Oh, no, yeah, it wouldn't go beyond the geotubes. It's gonna go to the
Yeah, but
top
if it
of
wasn't,
the
it was longer than the geotubes. The project site you pointed out yesterday was,
I think that given this, that really we should just, back to the comment about, you know, stuff will slide without it, that it's really just going to have to be planning about the geotubes.
and how far do you think it'll be extending out along, on the geotube? I'm just trying to get an idea of depth and quantity, and, I mean, if,
Somewhere along that top, you know, they have to maintain that same
Somewhere else.
area for flat area that they're maintaining now
Right.
for the cover.
And the
So I would
access.
see it coming to that toe of the slope of right now where you have the plateau that
Yeah.
the dozer runs over. So that right there to meet the top of the bank, and then you would fill that in.
so you don't see really covering, you don't see going over the top of the bags.
I don't, because I think that they're gonna I think they have to keep that
Okay.
profile to stay compliant with their other permit.
Yep.
But, you know, I think that it would be helpful if I, you know, change the arrows on the plan and perhaps show where that toe would be for you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to
I
get an
have to
idea
calculate,
of
it's the only way I'm
how
gonna be
much
able to calculate the
calculate,
volume.
Yeah.
Just to look at that, and so.
Can we see a side profile of the slope too on the inset or something, like you did on?
Yep.
Because I'm worried that it'll have to come out on the geotubes to get a slope that's going to hold that.
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
Let me work on that too.
Yeah,
Well, I
we'll
can
see what
only
it
go, I can only go to this point anyway because it's town-owned land. So no work can go past this line, just like.
Sometimes if the DPW knows about it.
So that you see where it's gonna be, right? So that's gotta be it, and that basically splits the middle tier. So that's as far as we can go, and I can delineate that on the plan, that toe of fill, and that's where it's gonna have to be.
So it's not a big drastic angle change.
I'm sorry, what?
It's not a very drastic angle. You're not going to
No, I
get
think
much
it's
of a
more
change.
filling.
Yeah, you're going to get
I
called
think what we have
hollow.
now is
Yeah.
this.
Yep.
It's like concave,
Yeah,
if you
so
will, and now you're gonna go to maybe a slightly convex,
Interesting. Okay.
as shown on the other picture, which is gonna take a volume, you know, that's why I didn't want that to be, you know, misunderstood in terms of the veneer.
You'll still be working, you'll still be working some on town land, just as far as, I mean, you can't stay, it's not like it's lava and you can't touch it. I mean,
That's right.
You're gonna be stepping on town land and.
As any member of the public could.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're not gonna propose any plantings or fill related to the planting, you know, this is a planting project, so the plants won't go onto the town property.
Sometimes projects spill right off of the applicant's property and onto other areas.
Yeah, we know.
This might be a case where that's.
Ashley?
At one point when planting was proposed, and I may have missed it now,
Who's
the
your
top
one?
8 feet of the bluff was going to remain natural. Is that still the case?
And I suppose, I mean, that wasn't part of what I was proposing,
Okay.
but if that's a concern,
I
then.
thought it did say that in here, that the top few feet are going to
For
stay.
the nesting birds and things?
Right, for the nesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that there was that from
From
the past,
before,
but I
so
didn't, right.
I didn't know if that's still-
Specifically lay that out in here, but we can do that.
Yeah, just because these pictures shows, the sand grading all the way up
Right.
to the top, so.
It might help you with your slope.
Okay. Any other questions or anything from the public on the Baxter Road project? Oh, Pete, are you recording this?
No.
Oh, okay.
My last question was actually the length of the stakes that you thought you had for the.
4 feet, but I'll work, I'm gonna meet the contractor to, again, be sure that I understand, you know, what he had in mind. I saw it as the detail, you know, that I have the last page of the fiber roll detail.
SE5 page.
You know, that's sort of how I see it working, but, you know, let me clarify that for you.
Yeah, I mean, that detail was helpful, it's just, it was on such a shallow slope, I didn't know how that
And,
Would
you know,
there be
I-
a 90-degree angle to the core?
No, it would be
15?
90 degree to the slope.
slope, yeah.
Exactly, with a
Yeah.
4-foot stake is what I had in mind. Now, I see that they show 12-inch minimum, but I mean, in my mind, I had a 4-foot stake, but I think that adding a profile to the plan that gives you a detail on the plan that I've worked out, instead of something that I've just taken from product literature, let's refine it to be an engineered design for this application, and then and I hope that it'll meet your stated concerns and work.
Yeah, it looks like they trenched it too.
Okay, is there any more information we'd like Art to supply for the next hearing? Okay. Then,
Request a continuance, if I may,
for 2 weeks?
for 2 weeks, please.
That's a hearing objection, we'll continue for 2 weeks. Okay, thanks, Art.
Can you designate the size of the rules that you're going to
Yes.
use?
Okay, and that'll take us to Tambourine Properties at, Bucas, that's right, Bucas.
If I may, I'd like to, I just received some information this morning, so I'd like to request a continuance for 2 weeks on that, on Bucas, so that I can refine that and get it to you in advance of the meeting.
Okay, so unless I hear an objection, we'll continue Bucas for 2 weeks? Okay, thanks. It keeps coming and going here. Now Tambourine Properties, LLC, 2 South Beach Street.
Good evening, Don Bracken from Bracken Engineering, representing the applicant, along with Steve Cohen, who also represents the applicant. This property is at the corner of South Beach Street and Whalers Lane. It's a developed site with a current restaurant use. Resources, coastal flood zone. There are no other resource areas or buffer zones associated that fall onto the property. The existing first floor elevation is 7.6, and the flood zone elevation is 8, so the existing structure is just shy of meeting the flood zone requirements for elevation. The proposed project consists of putting on an addition of about 220 square feet off in the corner of the building highlighted in orange here, that you can see that. Along with that, adding a handicap ramp connected to the addition to increase handicap access to the building. Also proposed is a shed in the same area of construction. The purpose of the shed is to hold a cooler unit for the restaurant. Right now, the cooler unit is actually on the other property, so we're moving it over closer to the building. This project does have to comply with the Stormwater Management Act. I did submit the certification. Well, conservatively, I'm saying it does, but technically, it may not. So I did the certification. What we did was we reduced the impervious area by removing, highlighted in blue on the plan, removing some of the brick areas in the front of the building towards South Beach Street. And where the addition is going in the back, there's an existing slate patio in that area. So when you do a comparison, there's no net increase in runoff, so we didn't feel that we had to provide any drainage or mitigation. I'm sure you know, groundwater is only a couple feet deep here. There's really not much we could do for drainage as it was. So with no net increase in flow from runoff, we feel that complies with the Stormwater Management Act. Everything goes to the existing street system as it is. And it's also, we also checked off under that section, it's a redevelopment. And the addition will have to be constructed in conformance with FEMA requirements. The ramp for handicap access will be a wood ramp with open slats and with specified stone surface underneath it, so that it would be considered pervious.
Okay.
That's it.
Any questions?
Just to be really quickly, this was subject to the stormwater policy because it's a commercial structure. So, since it's come up.
Okay. Anything from the public on the Tambourine? Okay, well, Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
Yes, sir.
You ready to close?
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to close?
So moved.
Have a second?
Sure do.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you.
That was easy.
Okay, the public meeting, request for determination. Ward 3, 29 Woodbury Lane.
Thank you for the applicant, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors, on behalf of Curry E. Ford, present property owner of 29 Woodbury Lane. 29 Woodbury Lane is a developed lot on Woodbury Lane, adjacent to New Lane. It is, the application before you is an RDA for the infill of the existing structure within the developed portion of the lot. Woodbury Lane is here in an east-west direction. We're looking to just square off this section of the building. There is an associated bordering vegetated wetland on the land bank property, comes partially into one of the residential lots within the subdivision. We are approximately 6 to 8 feet higher than that wetland. We're up on the plateau on Woodbury with a low wetland area down below. All work is outside the 25, outside the 50, and again, within an already developed area of the lot, and we're just infilling the building. So it's a request for determination of applicability. Happy to answer any questions.
Do we have a staff recommendation on this?
Yes, I would recommend, ultimately, I want to get the number right, because for some reason I want to say it's the -2, but it's a -3 for work within the buffer zone that doesn't require a notice of intent. And I would also add in there, since they didn't ask for it, a 2B that doesn't confirm the resource area boundary.
-3 and positive 2B, or
Correct.
just a 2B?
A positive 2B is just saying that we're not confirming the boundary as shown, but we're approving the work as work in the buffer zone that doesn't require it.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, quick and to the point.
Okay. Minor mods. Glenhurst Realty Trust, 11 Chase Links Circle, 137 Cliff Road. Sounds like 2 addresses. Or is it 2 addresses? Oh, it is, okay.
It's a new subdivision, so our guest car for the applicant. The entire property used to be 137 Cliff Road, and then a new subdivision, Chase Links Lane, was approved, and this is at the end of that subdivision. So I believe that the property is ultimately going to be known as 11 Chase Links Circle. But for right now, there's 2 parcels, and we're just listing it as the assessor had it. I think going forward, it probably makes more sense just to list it as the other one. It's 2 parcels under one property owner. To help give you a sense of where we are, we're up on, this was the old Graves property. It's been subdivided, and you got Tuppence Links just to the west, the Kosei house, and then this vacant lot. We're in front of you tonight for some modifications to basically the refinement of the layout and the architecture within the same approved limits of work from last time. There's no new structures from the last time. There's actually an elimination. The approved order had a pool, if I may, just so everyone can see, up in this area to the north, and that pool has now been moved to the south, but within the same footprint of the work. The footprint is highly regulated. This property is subject to permit from Natural Heritage, and so the limits of work are really the same as what they were. You can see that we had enhanced setbacks on this project, where instead of the 25 no disturb, you had a 50-foot no disturb, and that's still being held. So the proposal is really, this structure is a little bit different in footprint and exactly how it's positioned within that same limit of work. And we just want to be sure that before we go forward, that the actual layout that they proposed to build has been seen by the commission and blessed. I don't see any change in any, in terms of protected interests.
And is there a staff recommendation?
Yes, I would recommend this is a pretty classic minor modification.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve this as a minor mod?
So moved?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Well done.
I know. Good.
Finally, huh? Okay, certificates of compliance.
Which one?
13 Monomoy, LLC, Lot 1, John Adams Lane, or 1. I don't know.
I used to try to group these all together. Should I give that a shot, Mr.
I
Chairman?
don't think it works, Mark. Got to give it up sometime.
Sure, so this one was for, obviously,
Not
the development of the site. I think the plan is in everyone's packet, so I'll spare everyone getting up and getting up the tiny plan. It was for the construction of the little shed and the pool and the house within the 100-foot buffer zone to that tiny wetland off of the Cliff Road bike path. Everything was built in accordance with the plan. I know ongoing conditions that I would recommend, but I could recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance.
Is that what on the same side?
Yeah, it's just a tiny little constructed
It's that
wetland.
little thing
Yeah,
there.
no, I know.
That's
there?
I
Yeah,
feel
it's
like
kind
I have to ask now.
of pathetic. Okay, do I have a motion to issue the certificate of compliance?
So moved?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Houghton, 15 North Liberty.
So, continuing in our as-built plans that are there, and this is for the redevelopment of that site. Used to was subdivided off of the land bank parcel some time ago. For everything that's there, it's a retaining wall with a house and then the patio. And then there was an issue with an existing subsurface drain, which has been addressed. It was discharging into the lily pond. It's since been infiltrated into the ground. So,
Just a couple of things down from 17 and 19.
correct. This is on the other side of the lily pond parking lot from.
Subsurface drain that was discharging
It was discharging over land into the actual wetland area.
into
Now
a
it's-
wetland
Now it's being.
without any permit?
Correct. It's since been rectified through the permit to be infiltrated into the ground. And it's. being-
Did we track that? Do we know whether that was, whether the applicant had installed that, or?
The applicant, the original applicant, Mr. Howden, was not the installer.
He wasn't the
So,
installer.
it was
Was it
installed.
installed before he owned the property, or do we know?
As far as I know, it was, yes. I didn't really track it back after there because we're just dealing with the discharge, so it's been rectified.
But everything's in order here.
Correct.
I have a motion to issue the certificate of compliance.
Short discussion, Mr. Chairman.
What's that?
Short discussion, Mr. Chairman, on this motion.
Yeah.
Because it's come to my attention that drainage was put in without a permit, was put in under the prior ownership of the property, which was by the Nantucket Land Bank. And I think it's worth noting that.
The land bank would have put that in?
I didn't, I'll be honest, I
That
didn't
goes
take the time
way
to chase
back.
it. I mean, that's the only other property owner that owned that property, so.
So it's fixed.
So the land bank put
Correct.
the house?
What's that?
The land bank put the house in there?
Well, the house was renovated it was relocated and renovated in place.
Oh, okay.
So, they just they subdivided off the parcel of the house and then kept the remainder, but the drain came with the property. So I was more focused on getting the situation fixed as to tracking back when it,
But it is fixed.
yes.
Okay, so do I have that motion?
But I appreciate Mr. Golak's comment.
I'm sure you did. I'll second it.
You ready to go, Mike?
I'm ready to go. I'd like to have that observation noted in the minutes of this meeting because it's something we're going to revisit at another time.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
No one's perfect, Mike.
Okay, Weimar, 79 Baxter Road.
Okay, this one was for the relocation of the dwelling. Further away from the eroding coastal bank. It was moved, to its proposed location, there's really not a lot of other spots to move. And the site was restored to as they proposed, so I would recommend that this also can be issued a certificate of compliance. There's no other.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
For this existing top of bank, there's not like a date on that? Sometimes on this specific, which might be fine, but I don't know. Sometimes for this street, we want to know top bank when it was. I think Art might be able to help us.
Well, I would say, the plan itself is dated
This one he calls that.
January
In
8th.
the site notes, trying to re-download it.
Okay.
Okay.
So that answers.
I know you're going to say that.
If I may, Chairman,
You did. You were fully briefed in, were you?
Okay, guys.
I didn't, that top of bank was based on the permit plan, so the conditions don't reflect exactly the date, but I would add that that's on top of that planted bank. The date is really, all the structures were updated, in the last month or so, but I don't think that we resurveyed the bank, we showed it per the permit plan.
Okay, so it's,
Again, that also has structure beneath it, so it hasn't been.
Yeah, I actually had to guess. That's when I would guess that top of bank is. It's just.
Yeah, it's not a binding bank for the certificate of compliance either. It closes out the permit.
so we have a motion to issue.
Second.
I need the motion first. Okay, and then I'll.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Is there any
Aye.
conditions that are granted?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
I don't know if there's monitoring there.
Okay, now we have a reissue for Nantucket Marine at 20 North Cambridge.
Yeah, this is my fault. I had crossed out, we had originally, when we did this one last time, I had originally put some ongoing conditions that we decided not to have ongoing, and then the registry didn't like that, so we just need to get it re-signed so it's a clean copy.
Move to reissue, Mr. Chairman?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Okay, Hale, 117 Nantucket Road.
All right, so this was kind of a residential project for the construction of a garage, cottage, and drinking water well. I don't feel like.
Uh-oh.
Yep, and then there's a retaining wall, but it's a garage and cottage, so
think that's a
that
cheap shot.
comes around the backside, so this cottage and the well for that, and then the wall, so I'll slide it down real quickly. So for this cottage, around, and then the retaining wall, and the drinking water well, so we have the 50-foot setback comes in here, so it didn't require any waivers for its construction. I would say that it meets its permitted plan, and I would recommend that you get in compliance on this one as well, with no ongoing conditions.
Do I have that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Trainer, 13B Willard Road.
Sorry, 1 second. This is for going on Willard Street. For the one half that's there. This is for the construction of the dwelling on the one half of the lot. On the side, sorry, I'm mixing up again. Are in the buffer zone too, wetlands, which is for kind of a redevelopment. Again, the structure of the construction is done in compliance with its original permitted plan.
Any ongoing?
And there are no ongoing conditions that are needed for this one.
Do I have a motion to issue the certificate of compliance?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Okay. Now, orders of conditions.
I do have a little We have a couple that we closed last time. We didn't issue.
Okay, so the first one we have here is 55 Dukes Road, Lot 17.
Yes, this was for the residential development of the site there. I have the plan, it would be easier to see. So this is the one that had the pool on the back and then the area of the buffer zone. That was going to be rehabilitated, and then some grading that was there. Some of our comments for last time included some monitoring, some of the pool things. And then one of the other questions that had come up as part of that last hearing involved the final planting list for there. And we had said that, or at least my instructions were to include a condition for staff approval of the plantings. So for those who don't remember, this is the property where they're removing the existing dwelling from up front, constructing the house and the pool. The structure's all outside of 50. They're revegetating this corner.
We're gonna put up.
There, then they had the grading around the pool.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Are they going to put a little berm in down at the bottom?
Yep, and they were going to install, that was something that we discussed, I actually.
Didn't move the fence.
Move the fence.
Sorry, I forgot that in
That's
the
okay.
conditions. That, because we had talked about it at the hearing, but I wanted to add it. So I would add a number 23, that the applicant is to install a, we could say a 6-inch.
I don't remember.
Yep,
Just to
6-inch
stop.
berm at base of grading. Yep, number 22 is all plantings shall be provided to commission staff for approval prior to installation. They had proposed they were going to be doing all native plantings, but they didn't have that final list, so typically what we've done is just to have it come in and I'll review it.
Okay.
I'm going to accept plans already cluttered enough.
The waiver for this is no adverse impact, no alternative?
Correct, with the exception of, I put the restoration area inside of the 25, where they were doing up in the upper corner. I specifically call that out as net benefit to the resource area for the restoration work, but I separated that out.
I'm not worried about plans on that.
Yep. I'm trying to detail those a little bit more.
That's good.
Okay, do I have a motion to issue as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, help by abstaining from that, please.
Yeah, Mike.
All right, with Commissioner Glowacki abstained. Or, I guess, recused, I guess.
Nope, that's just one. It's just the whole packet.
Okay, 51 Crooked Lane, Kate Weld and Mins. Do we,
Jennifer Mooney. Cough while you say it. It comes out a lot easier. I did have a couple I wanted to add to that from our discussion that was there. I wanted to add a number 22 that specified the specific percentages of the herbicides and the timing on those. We've had some pretty standard conditions of that before with the 3% for full year application and 25% for play, and then also for the triclop here in the spring, and then the glyphosate in the fall as needed.
And they'll just clear that with you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Then the only other question I had was where that sump discharge was, did you guys want that run and infiltrated into the ground where they had suggested?
He planned to up by the driveway, didn't he? Oh, by the pool.
He said we needed to ask for it.
Oh.
Let's ask for it, yeah.
All
If they
right.
would
So
be
that'd be,
willing to do it.
Ask for it.
I'll be 23. Well, like I'll put a 23 that sump discharged is to be infiltrated.
Yeah, thanks to Laurentide for bringing that to our attention, that unpermitted discharge going on that property.
They said, thanks for finding the issues with this site.
The unpermitted discharge happening there on 51 Crooked Lane.
I know we didn't talk about it, but there was a bunch of debris like in the drainage ditch on the
There was,
southwest
yeah,
side.
we need to clean
Yeah.
up the debris.
Sure. So out of 24, that all
There's a bunch of debris and
debris and landscaping debris shall be removed.
yeah, I
from
think
the
there's
buffer zone.
landscaping debris and trash, ladders.
I think I'm gonna have this for like a month or 6 months, easily.
All right. So I'll add those 3 in. Other than that,
Okay, anything else? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion to issue as amended.
I'll move to approve as amended
You all right with that?
with the pool.
Yeah.
It is beyond the 50, and I mean technically.
Well, that's what I was thinking. is-
Yeah, I mean
Right.
technically it's. I don't really have a
It's
basis
out
to
there,
deny it. Really, it's.
Yeah. Okay. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
You know, it's interesting. The retaining walls too also keep the runoff.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, quirky
So
lot.
you want these permitted when they're built.
I know. Yeah, I wouldn't buy it.
Okay, Ferguson, 50 Hulbert Ave.
this is another one that we closed last time. This is on the upland side of Fulton Ave, I'll call it. So this is for the construction of, it's for the tear down of an existing structure and kind of the rebuild in compliance with zoning and the flood zone on the site. It's kind of a garage studio. They showed elevations on the plan of record, so I kind of memorialized that the grading is to be done in compliance with that plan of record. Other than that, I didn't really have any other conditions.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Okay, the land bank at 72 Washington Street.
We did close that one. That was for the house removal?
Okay, so we didn't close that one.
No, we did. We did close that one.
This one with the 2 posts.
Oh, yeah,
With
okay.
Again, I only really had kind of monitoring conditions because they weren't proposing any irrigation or fertilizer or anything fancy for their grass plantings. So I just had kind of a regular monitoring
That seemed
report.
pretty straightforward.
And then again, the waiver that was applied for was long-term net benefit for the removal of the structure. So
Okay.
it seemed pretty straightforward to me. Once we got the waiver request and protocol squared away.
Wood is not.
That's actually a standard condition built built into the ordinance. Correct. Yeah, that's specifically listed in the actual.
I think we just say pressure treated
Standard conditions.
Okay, do I have a motion to issue as drafted?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. And finally, 2 South Beach Street, portion, Tambourine Properties.
Yes, this is the other one that Don Bracken presented tonight. This is the Oren Moore building, where they would like to construct the cooler shed and the handicap accessible ramp. This is one, it originally appeared in front of us as an RDA, and then I reminded Don that we had to apply for it as a notice of intent, so that's what this was for.
No waivers required for this.
Nope, this is flood zone only.
Move to issue as drafted.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Okay, now, do we want to discuss anything else here?
I don't think we closed anything else
Oh, didn't we? Okay.
that we haven't already discussed.
Okay. So that takes us down to extension requests.
So, this is an extension request from the Conservation Foundation. The site here that they're specifically requesting the extension for is the Sconset dump site. Sorry about that. They've been doing the work, and they're also doing the regular monitoring. I know they've provided us some of those reports. But they're still identifying some areas and still doing some of that work out there, that their order of conditions is expiring.
What's exactly going on out there?
They are doing the woody shrub species that were encroaching. The project involved mainly removing woody shrub species encroaching into an anthropogenically created successional acidic shrub fen containing multiple state-listed plant species on the Foundation's Sconset dump property.
It's cool out there.
Oh,
So
it's really something, yeah.
they've been
Means
removing the woody shrubs, and I think they just
an
would like to
archaeological
keep the
site.
permit open as long as they can to continue that practice with the open permit.
Okay.
But they've begun the work, and they meet all the criteria necessary to be granted the extensions. I will say, just as a quick caveat, that this also did benefit from the Permit Extension Act at one point, so it's already been extended kind of by that, but I would say due to the nature of the work and the monitoring that they've been doing, that I don't think an extension is inappropriate.
How much they want? 1 year?
Yes.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
At the bottom. Right.
That motion carries unanimously. Okay. Did we have minutes? in this?
No,
Nope, no
I forgot to
minutes.
put them in this time.
Monitoring reports, any reports?
Nope. I don't have any included this time. I just been leaving it on there, that way in case one comes in. It reminds me to make sure you guys get it, and also
Okay.
any discussion.
CPC,
I missed a meeting yesterday because I decided it was more important to do our field visit. Not much, I don't think.
okay, NPDC,
Nope.
nothing,
Nothing to
mosquito
mention.
control.
We met the other day to discuss, we've got legislature becoming our own commission,
Okay, quiet, please.
Sorry.
and we were just reviewing whether we wanted to really be our own commission. So we met the other day to talk about funding and how we would do mosquito control for 2015.
Okay. Anything else? Mike?
Under Commissioner comment, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, we can go there.
Is that where we are now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I've lost track of when our contract with Laurentide comes up for review with our consultant.
We actually, that contract came up for review, and we put that out to bid, and they were the only company that submitted an actual bid for that process. No one else bid on that work.
And did it come in front of the commission then, or did it just get reissued, or what happened?
It was reissued as they were the only applicant that applied for the work.
When would that have been?
August of last year.
And how often does it come up?
It comes up every 3 years.
Because I had asked that we have a chance to review and discuss that. I understand that there was only one bidder, and I would like to specifically note in the minutes of this meeting my request that when it comes up again, that this commission do take a look specifically with respect to Laurentide's recommendation on 482737 at 51 Crooked Lane this year, and which we approved at this meeting, and with the history of the property under 482493 at 15 North Liberty, where we issued the certificate of compliance. I think there are some things there that would be worthy of discussion and examination before a contract with Laurentide is ever entered into again in the future. And so I would just ask that those specific references be brought again in front of the commission for review at the appropriate time.
Well, I mean, if
Just ask that that be noted that I'm requesting this. All I'm asking, not asking any action for the commission.
Can be in the minutes.
I would think if we're having issues with the way projects are being reviewed, that's something we could discuss. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know.
we can. And well, my request is a simple one here.
Okay. Anything else from commissioners? Jeff, do you have anything else tonight? Nope. So just a reminder of our executive session Friday afternoon at 4?
Right here.
This comes
Yes.
2 days from now then. Could you send us an email on Monday?
Yes, I'll send it in the morning, and I will send anyone who needs the call-in number.
4?
Yep.
4 o'clock.
And I'll send out the call-in number in case anyone can't make it that wants to call
What
in.
are we calling in from? Florida.
Well, I won't be there yet, I'll be traveling. But,
Oh.
Oh, boy. I'll get near a cell phone tower.
I've spent lots of quality airport time calling the Concom.
You've had trains, all kinds of good stuff.
I've had, yeah.
I'll send all the
Well,
information out.
something to do in an airport anyway. It's
Yeah.
worth your while. You're not just,
Yeah.
okay
Yeah, the
then.
airport's usually pretty good.
I think
Y'all
then
need to
we're
do the
done,
same thing,
so do I
Colin,
have
but
a
we
motion to
Move
adjourn?
to adjourn. So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
There's one of those here.
Seriously,
Huh? Yeah, you were.
I did see some minutes on.
Thanks, you too.